Hi, everyone, and welcome to a special press clips edition of Newsmakers, on the air since 2014. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, February 2nd, 2024, and I am extremely pleased to welcome Vicki Riskin, a true Renaissance woman and force of nature. Anyone who's been involved with good works in Santa Barbara probably knows Vicki, who in her various incarnations has been a therapist, a screenwriter, producer, union leader, high-profile global human rights activist, and an advocate for education, specifically here in Santa Barbara. And Vicki and her husband, David, suffered several tragedies in the Thomas Fire debris flow of 2018. We'll talk about that a little later. But as you know, in our press clips feature, we try to highlight enterprising people and projects in media that are working to bring high quality news and information at a time of widespread and misinformation. And so the focus of our conversation today is Vicki's newest project, in which she serves as president and publisher of Blue Dot Corp, promoting protection of the environment and issues of climate change. Vicki, welcome, and thanks so much for joining Newsmakers.
Thank you, Jerry. Spending time with you is always my favorite activity of everything else that I do. So,
well, yeah, I'm much taller than my picture. I want you to know that. So.
And more handsome than your picture.
So, what is Blue Dot? Tell us what is Blue Dot?
Blue Dot is a media company, but it's specifically a publishing company that is doing both print and digital publications, which I'll explain, focusing on how people can live more sustainably, but without feeling guilty. It's a lifestyle magazine. It's not a doom and gloom. It's a solutions-oriented publication, and it operates both on the national, international platform that we have and local platforms. So just to be specific, what does that mean? Well, we have newsletters and websites in 8 locations right now. And that would include Brooklyn, Toronto, Martha's Vineyard, Boston, San Diego, Los Angeles, and Santa Barbara. And
That's
now,
8.
Is that 8?
Yeah.
Wait, then maybe we're at 9 because I have Nantucket. We're just starting Nantucket.
Oh, no, we don't. Yeah, you don't have
Nantucket
on the
due.
website yet. No,
Yeah.
okay.
And then we have the print versions, and I can go into that. And then we have topic particular newsletters, and those are different. The national newsletter pulls in stories from all around the world. And it might be a small farmer in Iowa. It might be a person who's cleaned up rivers in Bali. It's to put a spotlight on all the amazing stuff going on. And then we have a separate newsletter that is called the Marketplace. So it's good companies like the Patagonias of the world, smaller versions. And then we have something called the Daily Dot. And the Daily Dot is like Dear Abby, except Dear Abby isn't with us anymore, but she sends out a little missive, a lovely note, and then a little tip about what you can do. So yesterday was about belonging, recreating that sense of belonging that we lost, partly because of COVID, partly because of the crazy digitized, hyper-digitized world, and just finding a place where you can slide in at a library, a coffee shop, and be with people, community. So that's it.
Well, yeah, a lot to break down there. So, and I want to talk specifically about that. There is a version of the newsletter aimed at us here in Santa Barbara. But let me back up a little bit and talk about a couple words that you mentioned. One is solution focused, and then practical things too, because I do think, you know, the media, I think, rightfully gets a lot of criticism for not focusing more on climate change, you know, because it is the one existential issue that's facing all of us. But I think it's just, you know, people feel it's so big. You know, what am I going to do about it? And also, you know, what difference does it make what I do? So talk a little bit about, how you came to the focus about solutions, and also, breaking off little pieces that people could do.
Well, it's right to say that it is big and complex. That is true, and that it can feel overwhelming. And yet, an example would be 30% of all food that's produced in the United States just thrown away, just thrown away. And if we didn't throw away so much food, or if we gathered it up and composted it, which we do here in Santa Barbara, we have that opportunity in Santa Barbara. We have amazing digester. And if there was more regenerative farming, you could pretty much bring the carbon out of the air and solve the problem. So just what goes into your kitchen and what you eat is a place to start. And it's a delicious place to start, because healthy, good, non-processed food, not packaged in 500 layers of plastic, is a lovely way to live. So it's kind of moving people in that direction, in a way that they can manage. And yet at the same time, we do feel, we do plug in stories that might have a more alarmist quality to it if it was published somewhere else, but it is more the storytelling of what's happening in a community. So I'll give you a little example of that. I live on Martha's Vineyard now, and we can get into why I'm living there. But the biggest threat to that island are the estuaries or ponds. In New England, they call a big, what I would have called a small lake. And some of them are attached to the ocean and some are freshwater. But it's like a bunch of fingers that kind of have, go into the island. Because people use nitrogen to have beautiful green lawns, that nitrogen goes into the ponds. Because they have septic systems and the urine goes into the septic systems and into the ponds, there's overgrowth in the ponds. So they start to suffocate, and there is a cyanobacteria that grows, and it grows aggressively. Now that sounds very complicated and sciencey, and it is, but people, in order to protect where they live, need to stop putting nitrogen to fertilize their lawns, and they need to switch to filters for their septic systems. And more people understand that and the beauty of those ponds and care for them, we're starting to move people in a positive direction. Communities around ponds are making agreements among neighbors, allow your lawn to be wild. So we have a campaign called Martha's Vineyard Wild Gardens, to make it cool, to make it, I think people do stuff because other people are doing stuff. It's like the sandbox. Everything in my life is, the messages I learned in like nursery school. If all the kids are doing something, they'll come along. One kid, 2 or 3 kids do something, they come along. So it's really moving the needle that way.
How did you come to do this? What was, what was the process that led up to a Blue Dot? And I know you're always looking for a project to in search of your view that about the perfectibility of man, but be that as it may,
or woman, or people,
or woman. Yes, I'm sorry, I'm very old. But yeah, what was the thinking that led to the project?
I was standing at my trash can, and I had a paper towel in my hand, and I thought, I am going to be a better citizen myself. There were 2 things that happened. So that was that one moment, and I was holding the paper towel, and I said, I don't know if I can compost this, or should I put it in the trash, or put like the simplest thing in my household was I was already failing, right? And then I thought, well, I'm just going to keep learning about what I can do just in my own home, and maybe I can find ways to communicate that to other people. What are the simple things? And then it was, well, where can I get paper towels that have been from recycled paper or from bamboo? They're great towels that you can actually wash that are like paper towels. So it
Mhm.
just sort of built on that. But the second thing that really was the springboard, I was watching, it was during COVID, and I was watching one of these closed circuit little videos of a town hall meeting on Martha's Vineyard. And middle school kids had decided that they wanted to mount a campaign to ban the use of single-use plastic bottles, that was what they could do as kids. And so they learned all about, they did all of their research, they prepared their remarks, they had little t-shirts, and the use of single-use plastic bottles, of cute t-shirts. And they went to the town hall meeting. Now, it's not the easiest thing to move the needle on an island where businesses are open for 4 or 5 months. A little store counts on people coming in and getting a Coca-Cola, right? Those kind of things. So they came in and they made their case before the town hall meeting, which is about 150 people. And everybody votes. And they submitted a resolution to ban the sale of these single-use plastic bottles, just in this one town on Martha's Vineyard. And they did such a great job. And they got a unanimous vote and a standing ovation. And I thought, if these children can do work in climate change and sustainability, what's my role? What am I doing? And so then I began to think about storytelling and communications, and could we do a magazine? And so we
Mhm.
did. I just think show and tell is good. This is one of the later
Yeah.
magazines. So you see farms and food. This is a guy, and of course, corn is so fantastic on the island in August. And then inside there will be other features, including recipes, because food is such an important part of this whole sustainability climate change movement. So in each of the recipe stories, it's educational, but also, fun.
It's accurate to say this was kind of a COVID era project that bubbled up under that time and the circumstances. So you had the magazine first.
Yeah.
Now you have a number of digital online newsletters, including one for Santa Barbara. How is that different? And are you still publishing the magazine? How many different
Yeah.
publications are there?
So we started with the print is only in on Martha's Vineyard, and then this year it will be on Nantucket, and in June, late June, early July in Santa Barbara with the Independent.
Oh, really? Talk
Yeah.
about that project a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm so excited. We met yesterday with the famous Nick and the famous Tyler and the famous Marianne.
I've heard of them. Yes.
And the Independent team. And we have so many stories already from Santa Barbara. We have enough for dozens of issues, but we're going to do one this year. It's going to be the annual Blue Dot Living at Home on Earth, published by the Santa Barbara Independent, but in cooperation. We made an arrangement. That was a wonderful meeting because there's some incredible, well, Marianne and Nick and Tyler are very creative, and we mapped out a bunch of our stories yesterday. I brought my team in from my local Santa Barbara editors come up here routinely. They're from San Diego. We do an issue, a digital only issue in San Diego. And we've been meeting with dozens of people, and it's been fantastic. So there's something about print, as you know, that when people pick this up, they keep it. They put it on their coffee table.
Right.
And they go say, there was that story about where I can do this, or I love that recipe in there, and they keep it. And that's just doesn't happen digitally. Digital stuff goes, it can be dynamic, you learn, but it also flies away. But it's a big lift to do a print version in, say, Los Angeles. It would be impossible even distribute that, it'd be very expensive. So we can reach audiences through the digital version. So if you just plug into your computer, Blue Dot Living Santa Barbara, the website comes up and it'll ask you, would you like to get the newsletter for Santa Barbara? And you'll say yes. And then you'll say, maybe I'll like one of the others that they're offering. Maybe it's the daily little thought piece. Maybe it's, we're going to do a recipe, Blue Dot Kitchen, pretty soon. And I love reading recipes and then, putting them out and cooking. Yeah.
So what's been the response that you found to the project overall, but then specifically in Santa Barbara?
Well, Santa Barbara's fairly new, but we're growing quite well. We're supported by the Montecito Bank and Trust, as well as Riskin and Associates. You may notice that there's a commonality of my last name and
yeah.
And so it's kind of a family thing there, but and then we'll have support from Village Properties and some others. The response has been great. I love the stories that we've done in Santa Barbara. We did one about Lotus Land. We did one about, we have Lizzie Fallows writes for us here. I don't know if you recognize the last name Fallows. James Fallows. Yeah. So this is his daughter.
A classmate of mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And she's doing great stuff. And her stuff focuses more on, she has 2 little kids and she lives the most perfect, sustainable life. It's almost intimidating.
Where?
In Montecito. Her family's been here for years. They've been here so long, they remember the Miramar Hotel from the olden days. We were talking about that. She's delightful, and it's about biking her kids to school or taking them camping, and she's got a great voice. And then we just did a story about the Arroyo Hondo area, and just a little wonderful collection of stories. And then the newsletter will say, hey, this, it's every other week. Here are some of the stories, and you click through and you can read them.
And how can people subscribe where do people go to subscribe?
So I recommend that they go to our main website, blue.living.com, and then in the top left corner, they'll see locations. And then they can click on, Santa Barbara, or maybe somebody is listening to your show and they also want Los Angeles. They come up on weekends, or, they just know Los Angeles. So,
and we should point out that it's all free, right? At this point.
Totally free. And that's going to be that way forever.
People are welcome to contribute.
They are more than welcome to contribute. We're going to try to build out this year a membership program and maybe have some things that if you are a member, you get that are special. I'm kind of leaning myself towards discounts at good places, others of us think it should just be some nice thing. We're sorting that out. I would love to hear from your listeners what they would like. They could email editor@blue.living.com and it would actually come into my inbox.
Okay. All right. Great. Fair enough. I've just some of the recent, we talk about news and, what's happening right now. I think the sustainable Super Bowl snacks is probably top of mind in my household, along with the ethical, planet-friendly Valentine's chocolates, which Linda has called attention to.
Oh, good for Linda. So, with chocolate, there's a lot of bad stuff about where it's harvested and where it comes from. And so it's not so easy to find these companies, and often they're small, but wonderful, that have fair trade chocolate, and it's delicious. And you want that combination of tasty and thoughtful. So if we recommend it, we hope we do a lot of due diligence. We're not perfect. I want to make that very clear.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
Every once in a while, I say, "Yeah, I don't know. I think that was not that was not perfect." But by and large, we have a fabulous person doing our marketplace. She's a wonderful writer. Her parents were journalists. You probably even know them. Uh, Henry Weinstein. Do you
Oh,
remember?
sure. I
So
know
Henry's
Henry.
daughter, who's got this wicked set, and Lori Becklin was her mother, both from the LA Times. And she has a wicked, wonderful, charming sense of humor and is a great researcher.
Yeah, Henry was a great legal and courts reporter for the Los Angeles Times for many years. We actually met in San Francisco, but
Yeah.
Henry is the author of one of my favorite expressions of all time, which is "That's enough to make a hog puke." But
Well, his issue, as they say, his daughter has that same wonderful sense of humor.
yeah, and uh, the other thing, I mean, there is more weighty, substantive, scientific stuff about climate too. The clarifying California's weird weather, which we are now experiencing another bout of, is really. You've got I forget the fellow's name who's writing on that subject, but it's very informative and I think very clearly and demystifying, I think, a lot of things. So, for me, that's kind of the pitch. It's like, climate change. Oh no, I'm
Right.
going back and pulling the covers over my head. But here is a publication, a series of publications that's offering people, ways to do something about it. So,
Right. And not be so terrified, because it can really strike terror in your heart to think about it. But sometimes some of the reporting, we had a wonderful meeting I mentioned before we got on the air with James Saltzman, who's a water specialist and a lawyer at the Bren School, and he teaches at Harvard, and he teaches at UCLA. And um, water is such can't even begin to where do you start the story of water in California, right? It's
yeah.
most complex. And sometimes we imagine that someone's going to turn off the spigot upstream and we will never get any water again, that kind of panic feeling. So some of our job is what's really going on and how bad is it and what would we do and so on. And so we're thinking of starting a column called the Water Log.
No, that's a great idea. That's
Yeah.
who else? Uh, Public Policy Institute of California has a wonderful uh, water division where they write about all those issues and very very helpful and very data based, I should say. All right, Vicki. Once again, what's the website is what?
www.blue.living.com.
All one word. BLU.
All one word, yeah. And BLU, I mean, I don't know why we did it this way, but we like it. If you see our logo, it's all one word, blue dot, and then the U has two little, they call them umlauts, but it's supposed to look a little smiley. I don't know if you saw the subtlety of that.
I missed that. The smiley umlaut. There's my
So,
lead.
so
There it
you
is.
see here, you see the little
Oh yeah,
smile.
I do see that now.
So
Yeah.
sometimes little smiley will show up in various places.
Yeah. And everything is really well designed, I have to say too. So once again, Vicki, you are doing the Lord's work. And I just want to talk about a couple of things really specific to Santa Barbara in that regard. First of all, I don't think a lot of people know the story of Antioch University in Santa Barbara. And, they have that wonderful center now on Anacapa and Ortega Street. And that is basically, I think, a singular accomplishment of yours. You kind of uh, dragooned a bunch of us into becoming trustees, but we just kind of followed where you led and really puts Antioch University Santa Barbara on the map. one of your projects, and I think a passion of yours in terms of education. And then the other thing, I mean, let's talk a little bit about what happened to you
Mm.
and David in Henry in 2018 at the debris flow. It's okay, and he's barking at Linda again. I mean, it's insane. This
You know,
dog's
I can't hear him over here, but if you want me to bark back so he knows
no,
that there's
he's so bad. Anyway, so you lived on Randall Road, and one of the houses that got destroyed, and also lost a relative, a close relative. Talk a little bit about your experience in the debris flow.
it's been a multifaceted experience. Well, first of all, it was very humbling after the fire. We cleaned everything up, then put everything back into the house, and it was so beautiful and perfect and clean and so on. And we had one more night in the hotel, and they said we had to evacuate anyway. And everybody in this town remembers that night because the intensity of the rain was just kind of biblical. So the next 2 or 3 days, we did not know what was going on. We could not go back in. And someone was looking through a Google Earth thing and zeroed in and said, "Vicki, I think your house is gone." And I said, "That's not my street." And then I widened the image and it was. So we knew, and David was in high denial. He said, "That's probably," he just said, no, that can't be. So I couldn't figure out how to get in because it was urgent to get in, and
The roads were all blocked off, of
the
course.
roads were all blocked. The only way I could get in was by saying that I would be on the nightly news and be interviewed as a local resident and get in the film truck. And I did. And I have to say, instead of feeling, oh my God, I lost everything, my house is barely there, most of my house landed on my neighbor's house. It was kind of weirdly awesome in the sense that nature is so powerful, and it created from what was once a very lush and green and populated street to like a moonscape. And so it was kind of an odd, awesome, awful, if that sounds a little crazy, but nature is powerful, and you have to be respectful, is sort of the way I felt. So we then moved to Martha's Vineyard within 3 days, and that was it. But
I have to say that, characteristically, you found something positive to do where you rounded up all the neighbors and organized, and were really an important person, I think, in the creation of this new debris basin on Randall Road. Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah. The first day the neighbors gathered, the head of the flood control district, Tom Ferrum, came to the street, and he kind of quietly said, "Would any of you be interested in just signing a piece of paper that says, if we could get funding, you would consider selling your land?" It was not a deal, but it was just, kind of opening up we all did. And then when it looked like we could get FEMA funding, there were many steps to get to that, but I knew I did not want to rebuild along a creek that had flooded many times, and the county should never have let anybody build there to begin with. So what could we do with that land? Well, if we sold it, they could create, as Tom described, this debris basin. And that just felt right, because then we would be protecting people downstream. And it was a year and a half working closely behind the scenes with the county engineers and all of the politicos and all of the agencies. And I have to tell you, it went up in record time. And when it was all done, the boys, I called them the boys, the county engineers, Tom Ferrum and John Fry, said, Vicki, what can we do for you? And I said, I would like a memorial to my cousin Rebecca on my
Who was one of the 23 people
Yeah.
who lost in the catastrophe.
So they went to work. I mean, they were so grateful for my support. They would have built the Statue of Liberty up there, but I said that's a little big. So we put a big stone with a Maya Angelou quote that says something, when you meet someone who is smart and generous and good, thank the universe. And then it was to Rebecca Riskin, who died. So it's up there. And then when it was all put in place and I worked with her son so we could have some olive trees and benches, Tom Ferrum and John Fry, the two engineers, and I went up there and sat quietly and we cried because we'd all worked so hard. And when people are cynical about county government or civil servants, I think of these two guys. They could have retired, they really felt a dedication to make this happen. And I was like the cheerleader or their Girl Friday. I was running around talking to the supervisors or to Hannah Beth or to Salute, all of whom were great. And we got it done. And I was there yesterday. And I went up and looked because there was a little window and I heard the water running underneath the road, and it all works beautifully, and it's held through all the storms that we've had. But this whole feeling of collaboration, and I had to get the neighbors to agree that they would sell their land. And I don't know how they feel today. They probably think it's probably worth twice as much if they just kept it. But there's a point at which it's not about money. It's really about making something that protects the community that you love.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you played such a valuable and important behind the scenes role, that things open or they cut the ribbon or whatever, everybody's trying to get in the photograph. And, I really did want to bring attention to
Thank you. Thank you. That was funny. I was happy to see that, but neither Tom nor John nor I were there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or what's the right?
And we know who pushed his face in the middle of the picture.
Yeah,
Supervisor Zelig there. But all right. And the other thing I want to mention, amid all this, you also managed to churn out a prize-winning biography of your parents, memoir, double biography. I don't know if a lot of people know your mom was Fay Ray, who upstaged King Kong in the original version of that, and of course your dad, famous screenwriter,
Robert Riskin.
No, I'm looking for some of his films. Oh, It Happened One Night, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, Lost Horizon. How's the book doing?
The book did great. It was nominated as Best Biography of the Year by the LA Times Book Festival. I didn't win, but George Packer won, and I sort of would have voted for him myself.
Yeah, that's pretty good company.
I was just happy. But unfortunately, the gala that they were, we all were invited to the gala, but it was during COVID. So I think my book probably would have had a much bigger, it did well, but not out of the box, because, my book tour was cut off by COVID.
Did pretty well on social media, I have to say.
Yeah. But, it was a fantastic experience, obviously hard. Anybody who thinks writing is easy isn't doing a good job writing, it's writing is hard. Well, you're facile, but I'm not.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But relating back to the mudslide, so I had the manuscript done. I had a publication date of March something. all these events were in January, and in the upstairs of my house were all my final notes and photographs. Right. And so it's like, oh my God, how am I, and like the precious things, like that box where you say, I don't want to lose any of this. So I put it upstairs because I thought if water came in downstairs, I shouldn't have done that. I should have put it in the car. And so I thought, well, that's okay, Vic. You gotta dig in, you gotta duplicate photos, you gotta try to remember what it was in the notes, and also be on the phone with the insurance company about all our losses. And we had people who were cleaning up the debris. Our house had flown on top of our neighbor's house, the upper story of our house, and crushed her house. So we were going through things together, not me, but a crew. And someone said, they looked in the window and they said, oh, there's a box right in the middle of this room that was on top of the neighbor's house, untouched, not a drop of mud, not a drop of water. It's the only thing I cared about.
Wow. Wow.
Isn't
That's
that wow? It was just, and so then I trundled on and I went around the country. And I think what I loved about the book tour, so to speak, was going to these places I never would go. Mars, Pennsylvania. I mean, who goes there? El Paso. I went to El Paso. Miami. But you always meet people you would never meet otherwise, and it's kind of it's a ruse, really, for making great connections with interesting and unusual people. So,
Yeah.
especially film buffs.
And the title of the book?
Fay Ray and Robert Riskin, A Hollywood Memoir.
Yeah. And it's a good read. I had the privilege to read it actually in manuscript. And it's really interesting. Some really great stories there. And I don't know anybody who's better at making connections than you are. You really have a huge talent for bringing people together and launching projects that benefit people. And the latest, of course, is Blue Dot Living. So it's bluedot.living.com, correct? You want to check it out. And Vicki Riskin, thank you so much for taking the time and for all you do. I mean, you really are a model citizen and make all of us grumpy, cynical types turn away in shame.
Well, I love hanging out with you, grumpy, cynical types, and I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to do something
All right.
wrong. But anyway, I love what you do, Jerry, and I love Newsmakers. I watch regularly, and that's the great thing about being on the other side of the country half the time. I never feel too far away because of you. So,
and we always enjoy it when you come back and spend some time here. So, Vicki, thanks so much for spending time with us.